Fear Not, Episode 88. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today you and I are going to be joined by Dr. Judson Brewer. Hello, Dr. Brewer. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Are you ready to fear not today?
Let's go for it.
Judson Brewer is a thought leader in the field of habit change and the science of self-mastery. He is the Director of Research at the Center for Mindfulness and Associate Professor in Medicine and Psychiatry at UMass Medical School. He's also adjunct faculty at Yale University and a research affiliate at MIT. He has published numerous peer-reviewed articles and book chapters, trained U.S. Olympic coaches, and his work has been featured on 60 Minutes, TED, Time Magazine, Forbes, BBC, NPR, Business Week, and others. He's the author of the recently published The Craving Mind, From Cigarettes to Smartphones to Love, Why We Get Hooked, and How We Can Break Bad Habits. Judson, can you take a few moments to fill in the gaps and maybe also give us a brief glimpse of your personal life?
Sure. Well, I think that's a very nice introduction. That describes most of what I'm doing right now. Personally, I'm trying to live as good a life as I can and also try to help others along the way.
That sounds great. Would you also share with us today one of the biggest fears that you've had to face?
I would say that has been the fear of death.
And how have you dealt with that?
That's a great question. I remember back, I was probably in junior high school where I used to wake up. I don't know, this is before I go to sleep. I'd bite holes in my sheets because I would have this fear that, I was going to die and that would be it. Since then, I have stopped biting holes in my sheets, fortunately. But that fear still comes up from time to time. Often now it kind of wakes me from sleep if that's whenever it manifests. I have to say the biggest thing that I've worked that's been helpful there has been my own personal meditation practice.
Could you be a little bit more specific about what you do in your mindfulness practice?
So my mindfulness practice has probably been the most helpful thing for me in the world, hands down. Like of anything that I've done, any trainings, any education that I've received, this has really helped me see the world much more clearly. And with regard to fear, whether it's the fear of death or any other type of fear, it really helps me see what fear feels like experientially. So I can, instead of being afraid of the feeling of fear, which can then, perpetuate itself, I've learned to be able to really get curious about what the sensations feel like in and unto themselves so that I can really dive in and see that these are really just physical sensations that are driving my life. And they lose their teeth that way, those sensations.
Would you say that you're just changing your thoughts? I mean, very much like you're dealing with habits in your book.
I would say it's changing my relationships to both the feelings and the thoughts. So, the thoughts, if we think of a habit loop in terms of a trigger, a behavior, and a reward. So if the trigger is like a thought, like I'm gonna die, and then that behavior is the clenching feeling that I get, or back when I was in junior high school biting my sheets, and then the reward was feeling a little bit better because I did something, to kind of mitigate that. I've really learned that that's actually just those are habits that can become self-perpetuating. So, for example, if I ate, chocolate or cupcakes every time I had a fearful thought, I'd probably become, it'd be much more easy to get obese, for example, or eat unhealthfully. And that happens for a lot of us where we start trying to fix these problems, whenever we're triggered to do something because of the unpleasantness of whatever's happening right now. These habits get set up this way. So, uh, with mindfulness training, I found that, and my research has shown this as well, that we can actually take that same reward-based habit loop and really look closely at the rewards so that we can see clearly what we get. Like biting holes in my sheets isn't going to help me with so much with my existential crisis, and by seeing that clearly, we can start to open up to new ways of being, so that that trigger, whether it's a fear thought, can lead to curiosity, so a different behavior. That curiosity has in itself its own intrinsic rewarding properties. Curiosity actually feels pretty good as compared to fear. If we want to break it down to, like, fear leads to a contraction of our mental state and even our physical bodies, whereas uh, curiosity is more of an expanded quality of experience. So even in that moment, I can get different rewards simply by changing that behavior, and that really comes from the awareness practices that are trained through mindfulness training.
Judson, you must have come across I'm assuming some pretty amazing resources, not only to help you deal with your fear of death, but just sort of in your mindfulness practice and getting to the point where you're at. Would you mind sharing some of those with us today?
Yes, I'd say so. The practice itself, and I think one of the first books that I came across that was really, really helpful for me was called The Mindfulness Plain English, by a guy named Penelope Gunaratna, and people can actually get a free PDF of it online. I read that 3 times and found it immensely helpful. I've been doing a lot of meditation retreats over the last 20 years, and have had the great fortune to work with good teachers along the way. So other resources have come via meditation centers like the Insight Meditation Society or the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies, which are both up in Massachusetts, which provide really top-notch resources in terms of skilled teachers leading retreats, great retreat facilities, and even with the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies, a combination, this really unique combination between scholarship and practice. So those are some of the resources that come to mind. We've even developed some resources, some evidence-based trainings for mindfulness, for like smoking cessation or helping people with stress and emotional eating. So obviously I'm biased because we developed these, but the Eat Right Now program is an evidence-based training that helps people in a step-by-step manner learn mindfulness through the pain point of stress and emotional eating. So that's something that people might find helpful as well.
Are you ready for the speed run?
Mm-hmm.
What individual, whether they be fiction or real, has made the most impact on your life?
Can I say 2 of them?
Sure.
So the historical Buddha, who was a super scientist, he really understood how the mind worked, without torturing graduate students or killing mice or anything like that. So that guy was a genius, absolute genius. Second, a little closer to our time, Gandhi, a really remarkable guy in terms of the nonviolent movement. Hats off to both of them.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what would you change?
I would help people see more clearly when they're causing suffering for themselves and others.
What's your biggest weakness?
Great question. What's my biggest weakness? Impatience.
What's your biggest strength?
Awareness.
And if you could only have one book to read, what book would you pick?
I would read the Pali Canon in English, of course.
And do you have a favorite sound?
Instruments. My favorite well, I play the violin. But I actually like the sound of the cello.
And Justin, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I have a website that links up to everything that we do called judsonbrewer.com.
Justin, what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
Uh, that there is hope for the world. And I think through learning practices such as compassion and kindness, and all of that comes through awareness, we can actually become much more connected than our world seems to feel right now.
That's excellent advice. And I want to thank you so much, Judson, for coming on the show today and just being generous with your time and your knowledge and sharing your story.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.